Monday, bloody Monday. All right, let's go. Eve, news, weather, and sports. Hi, welcome. I'm Mike Azariah. Today is April the 6th, 2026, and let's get into it. Reason I started with a reference to a song is just like the Troubles in 72, there has been a lot of combat lately in two separate big incidents, and I'm going to talk a bit about both of them and try to put some of it in perspective because some of you don't have that long of a memory. You may be new to Eve, and this will be a little bit of a history lesson in addition to the news. Let's do the smaller one first. Turner. Turner's a system in LowSec, and Snuff and friends decided to kick Big Ab out of it and take down a faction fort, and it was brought down. A fair amount of explosions happened, not a huge amount, relatively speaking. I hear they came just short of 1,000, about 980 players, something like that, at the peak of the battle. So it was a nice big battle. I'm sure a lot of people had fun. Some people lost stuff, some people won stuff on both sides, and a fine time was probably had by all. On the other hand, in Akioth, Adioth, in Geminate, Nullsec, there was a battle. The Imperium, aka the Goons, decided that they are going to create a beachhead, a foothold in Geminate, and went to install a keep star there. The local denizens, Winter Company, did not appreciate that and voiced their objections with guns. So a battle broke out, and boy, did it break out. Up until now, I Googled this just to make sure. The biggest online battle with the most players or most accounts present in one instance was on Eve Online in 2020, the Bloodbath. And I think today's battle actually surpassed that in numbers. I've seen numbers of 9,800 players in the battle, but I'm told that some that were there, it actually did surpass 10,000 accounts, all in the battle at Akioth. Adioth. Why do I keep saying Akioth? I'm sorry. I will try to get it right. So it was large, it was violent, and it was a slideshow. You see, when you get too many players into a single system or a single node, which may be a small group of systems, not necessarily connected, but if one node gets overwhelmed by numbers of accounts and demands on it from players hitting fire buttons, launching drones, launching fighters, things happening all over the place, ECM and the rest of it, it used to be that the ships that were on grid would continue to fight, and anybody else coming in would get a black screen and not even load the system, but they could be shot as they arrived. We used to call it the black screen of death. Goons were famous for being first on site for some large battles just so that they could trap everybody else trying to arrive at the battle and kill them systematically. This was a favored tactic at one time. Today, it was a little different. They were the ones arriving into Winterco's territory. And so I've seen complaints, and most of them just make me laugh because they aren't remembering their own history. They don't remember how things used to be. They also don't remember what tie-dye is because it's been a while since we saw a major case of tie-dye. Let me explain what tie-dye is. Tie-dye is short for time dilation. What the server does these days, instead of going for the black screen of death and whoever has the most on grid and holds the grid manages to win everything, it slows everything down. And instead of hitting a button and some fires, it might be hit a button and it might take 15 seconds before that command goes through because it's going, oh, it's like handling a bunch of kindergartners. I want this, I want that, blah, 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 blah. And you just say one at a time. First, you, okay, you've asked for something. Then you've asked for something. Now you asked for something. You queue it all up and you take turns. This is very hard for people to remember when they're in the middle of video games when they're used to push button gunfires, push button shields up, push button 15 of your alts who are definitely not being botted or commanded by broadcast input broadcasting all fire simultaneously because you pushed lots of buttons, I'm sure. Lots of buttons that all fired within the same millisecond. It happens. And so tie-dye slows it all down and tries to chug through all of the commands. So what might have been a 1 hour battle, if everything was firing as it was, stretches out to 15, 20, 24 hours, unless it really gets to be too much. And then the node just goes, so, I give up, and shuts down. And everybody disconnects. Then it's a race to see who gets back in fast enough to be alive. And then if you can get your side in fast enough and put commands out there, then as other individual ships log in, you can blow them up and destroy them, divide and conquer, piecemeal. I wonder how many supers are dying right now. Now, I've seen complaints that Winter Company actually did this on purpose and crashed the node by flying Vexers and launching a ton of drones, each Vexer having 5 drones. And heck, that seems like a really smart thing to do when you're about to be overwhelmed by a larger, bigger organization, is to, if you can't have it, salt the earth, burn the fields, and poison all the wells. That's tactics, isn't it? But you may disagree with me. You may be a goon. You may be both, disagreeing with me and a goon. I'm okay with that. I'm way on the outside of this, smiling up in high sec, doing what I do, and reporting the news occasionally. But what I do know is how many ships have blown up according to Dotlan. And so let's talk a little about the violence that has gone on today. In Nullsec, the number one place is, of course, Adioth. Ha, got it right once. 4,354 ships destroyed today. 2,103 pods popped and sent home. In Lowsec, it was Turner with 445 ships, about 10% of what happened in Adioth, and 428 pods. In HighSec, it was Jita with 706 over 218. NPC space, the most NPCs dying were in Foxtrot Tech 88, Papa Juliet, that's Fountain, owned by Initiative. For moves, there were not a lot of moves that really caught my eye. In Alliance level, Initiative dropped 1,607 players or accounts. That's about 5% of the total, so it's not a huge hit, even though it's a big number. And in corporation level, it just seemed fairly static, 100 up here, 50 down there, that sort of thing. No big endings or beginnings that I could see that were worth, I think the biggest drop was Swiss players or a Swiss organization. But again, we know our history, or some of us remember our history, and remember that these battles are things that happen, and what happens when you keep pushing the N+1 narrative. N+1 means if they bring 50, you bring 51. If they bring 100, you bring 101. If they bring 5,000, you bring 5,001. And you just beat them by always having more than they got. Problem is, if they have 5,000 and you have 5,000, you all show up in the same system, you have a really good chance of crashing the nodes. It does not do you any good to complain that CCP needs to fix their game. No game in the world can come close to this. No game in the world can field 10,000 players all at the same time trying to do things on a single battlefield. The fact that Eve even allows this is phenomenal and attempts it and lets us try and push the system to the limits. And we do. Every time you say roughly 9,000, we might be able to get away with it. Hell with it. N plus one, 9,001, 9,002, 9,003, and it just keeps going. What happened was semi predictable. It also was something that players months from now will say, yeah, I lost a ship at Adioth. It was cool, or it was boring. I've talked to a couple of people who were there and they said, yeah, it was boring. Tie dye is not fun. It's not meant to be. It's the only way to have a fair, balanced battle as opposed to for whoever gets there first owns it and everybody else dies. Coffee infused Guinness, if you're curious. That's all I'm going to chat with you today. I know it was a. I was actually worried when I woke up this morning that it was going to be a slow news day. Then this happened. Thank you, Goons. Thank you, Winterco. Thank you, the Big Ab and Snuff. You all gave me something to chat about, and I actually went over my 10 minutes for once. Y'all have yourselves a good one. Ciao, Bella.